Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z is a game that generated a lot of controversy for fans of the series upon its release. Many Ninja Gaiden purists complained that it deviated too far from the franchise's template, but despite the changes, it's still a solid experience that comes along with some relentless action and impressive visuals that give the game a look and feel that can call its own. You take up the role of Yaiba, and after being killed at the hands of the series' main hero, you find yourself being brought back to life by a mysterious organization right in the middle of a zombie outbreak. It's now your job to clean up the streets and wipe out each and every one of them as you make your way through the city, and thankfully you've got one of many ways to do so, with the combat having a rapid, somewhat button mashing quality to it. That doesn't make the game easy necessarily, because while almost no single enemy is a major threat in and of itself, you're frequently surrounded by hordes of them, and when you start to deal out combos you'll find your life dropping rather quickly, but it can easily be replenished by pulling off an execution skill, where the camera pans in to reveal some rather impressive and fluid animations where Yaiba completely decimates his target in one of several unique ways. Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z is probably not going to appeal to everyone. The humour is often crass, the main character is one that a lot of people will struggle to get behind, and the style has a more button bashing feel to it than fans of the series are used to. It's not the longest game either, with it being able to be completed in a rather short period of time, but if you're looking for a game that's easy to lose a few hours to, or a completely different take on the tried and tested formula of the series past, then this is definitely one that's worth checking out. During the late 2000s, third-person shooters saw a boom in popularity, and to be fair, many of them were simply generic knockoffs of far greater experiences, but some would come along with a few interesting ideas of their own, and this is where Fracture comes into play. It takes place far into the future, where the player takes up the role of Jet, a soldier tasked with taking down a dictator who's hell-bent on destroying America. At the center of the game is the concept of manipulating the environment around you in order to use it as a weapon itself or a means to evade gunfire completely. The ability to experiment with the environment in this manner makes the power fun to have, but the fact that the enemy can also alter the terrain adds a huge sense of challenge to the game. Apart from this ability, weapons naturally play a huge role, with you getting the standard loadout including machine guns, rifles and rocket launchers, but as you delve deeper into the game, the weaponry starts to get really inventive and unique. The lodestone, for example, fires off a projectile that causes objects to gravitate towards the target. While it's mainly used as a tool to get platforms moving to a specific spot, using it on enemies creates some rather humorous results. Overall, Fracture is a solid third-person shooter, and the hook of manipulating terrain to your advantage is used a lot in the game, but it's used in a way that it rarely feels out of place, or simply just there as a gimmick. If you've all but exhausted the extensive range of similar games of its kind on the PlayStation 3, then Fracture will feel like a fresh departure that's well worth making some space in your collection for. Legend of K is an action platformer that never really found its footing when it first released on the PlayStation 2 in 2005. It wasn't until 10 years later where it would get its chance to shine with a complete remaster of the original adventure that sported improved visuals and gameplay that make it the best way to experience this often forgotten platforming gem. K is essentially a kung fu fighting cat who lives in a peaceful village with his uncle and master until he has to set out to free the kingdom from an evil sorcerer known as Shun and his army of evil rats. The story is as cheesy as it gets, which is kind of expected from a game like this, but it's fun thanks to the larger-than-life characters you'll meet along the way, which add a distinct amount of charm to the game's script. Now, the game starts off in a similar fashion to Zelda, where you must acquire a sword and learn a few basic moves, but the further you go on, it becomes more of a platformer. You'll jump around, solve small puzzles that usually involve finding hidden statues, and sometimes you'll even go through dungeons filled with obstacles to retrieve a key. But where the game really comes to life is during combat, and K's ability to pull off one of several special moves and link together combos, which feels incredibly satisfying. My only gripe with the game is that early on everything is varied in terms of gameplay, but towards the end it tends to start focusing just on the combat, and seemingly forgets many of the platforming and puzzle ideas from the early hours, but it's nothing that completely ruins the game as a whole. When it comes down to it, it's clear that the style and story is more aimed towards a younger audience, but the gameplay will appeal to platforming fans of all ages, thanks to a variety of genres that keeps it from being just a kids game. Saint Seiya Sanctuary Battle is a muso that closely follows the events of the anime show of the same name. As with many games of its kind, the goal is simply to mow down hordes of enemies that litter the battlefield, and from a gameplay perspective, it's all incredibly simple. You've got light, medium, and heavy attacks which are all assigned to one of the face buttons, allowing you to pull off some rather impressive combos with one of the several characters you have the choice of choosing. Another button allows you to pull off a special move, providing you have enough Cosmo, which is highlighted by a gauge on the screen, and fills up with the damage you either deal or take, allowing you to quickly come back from a sticky situation with one of several special techniques that light up the screen in style. Now, one of the main issues with the game is that the AI of the enemies leaves a lot to be desired. Even at the highest difficulty settings, your opponents will charge at you blindly from all sides. In these cases, the real challenge is to avoid their harmful attacks, which is easier said than done, since for some strange reason Namco decided to opt for a fixed camera that constantly frames your character, and without a lock-on system as well, it can be hard to keep track of which enemy you're engaging at any given time. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but it's for sure something that the game would have benefited from. From a graphics point of view, the most common enemies all appear very similar, with only the models of the main characters appearing highly detailed, especially in the reproduction of the characteristic armors that distinguish their various traits. What makes up for this is the sheer speed and amount of special effects and enemies on the screen at any one time. It's quite easy to get overwhelmed, but it portrays the intensity of the anime show perfectly, allowing fans of the source material to feel right at home. If you're looking for something that's fun and easy to pick up and play, then Saint Seiya Sanctuary Battle is a great choice. Pain at its core is a puzzle game, masking as a violent action title even if all the violence is self-inflicted. The premise is simple and sees you being presented with one of several environments where your character is loaded into a human slingshot and you must adjust your height and distance before launching yourself at one of many different targets. But to be truly successful, you'll have to master grabbing, throwing, and drifting, as each of them guide your character towards their doom all the more effectively, and get them in just the right position to inflict the most amount of pain on them. Now, there's three main modes to take on, with Paindemonium serving as the main event. It's your typical arcade mode that has you hurling yourself at different things in the environment and seeing how many points you can get. This mode is where you can unlock most of the bonus content, which is tied in most cases to the point system. Of course, you may be wondering how the point system works, and it's very simple. All you've got to do is cause the most pain. Bonus points for things like destroying certain body parts, decapitation, and getting run over by vehicles are the best way to rack up the highest score. With the game focusing on planning and executing the most cruel and painful route for your character imaginable. It ends up feeling like a showcase for the Havoc engine that's at the center of all of the action, and because of it, no two launches are the same, which helps keep the game fresh and entertaining for countless hours, and those hours will tick by totally unnoticed by all who are captivated by the engaging and wickedly fun gameplay. To be fair, I had pretty low expectations going into this one, but it's easily become one of my favorite games on the system that's absolutely perfect to play with friends, as it just never gets old. For anyone familiar with Twisted Metal or Carmageddon, you'll know exactly what to expect when jumping into Blood Drive. It's a vehicle-based combat game, with the goal being to mow down as many zombies as you can, whilst racking up as many points as possible. The real meat of the single player plays out in the tournament mode. Here you pick a character from a stereotypical lineup of rogues, whose attributes all seem to be limited to slow speed but with strong armor, or fast with weak armor. It would have been nice to see a bit more variation when it comes to this aspect of the game, but thankfully the minute-to-minute gameplay more than makes up for it. Once out on the road, there's one of 3 different objectives tied to each event. You've got Checkpoint Race, Capture the Skull, and an all-out battle mode that sees you racking up the highest amount of points you can in a small window of time. As you would expect, you've got a wide range of weapons in order to fulfill your goal, from rockets to miniguns, and even a special move for each character, such as an artillery strike that makes small work of the zombies on the road. One major issue though is that while most damage is done with weapons, they seem to be in short supply across all of the different arenas, while power-ups like repair kits and speed boosts are plentiful. As you can imagine, this does become a bit of an issue and takes away a lot of the fun, as instead of firing off weapons, you're mostly relegated to simply ramming into whatever you can. For all its issues though, there's still plenty to love, and the presentation is easily one of the best aspects of the game. The amount of zombies on screen at any one time is quite impressive, and even though the frame rate does tend to dip at times, it's nothing that ruins the overall flow of the gameplay. Despite its problems, Blood Drive is still a decent game to make your way through, especially if you're fond of the likes of Destruction Derby or Twisted Metal. Deathspank is an action RPG, and as you can imagine from its name alone, it's got a pretty quirky sense of humour. You play as Deathspank, vanquisher of evil, hero of the downtrodden, and are in search of something known as the artifact. This journey takes you far and wide, where you'll uncover plenty of opportunities to help NPCs with various tasks that only you are capable of doing. When it comes to combat, it's essentially a hack and slasher, where you'll be able to use both ranged and melee weapons to take down numerous foes. Deathspank himself has no magical abilities, and though you do obtain items that behave like offensive spells by doing ranged elemental damage, they consume 1 charge per use, and you don't really need them to beat the game. On the plus side, you can equip up to 4 different weapons and map each of them to one of the face buttons for quick access, and as you take out enemies, you'll be earning experience points and money, which naturally go into improving your attributes and gear that can make a huge difference when faced with multiple enemies at the same time. Now, the visuals in the game sport a cartoony, almost playful look, which fits in perfectly with the game's humorous tone. Deathspank and many of the citizens around the world that he lives in are often disproportionate and have various characteristics that help each of them stand out, making each and every one you meet feel like an integral part of the world as a whole. Overall, Deathspank is full of great writing and entertaining gameplay that's sure to please hack and slash fans. Unfortunately though, there's not that much in the way of replay value, as once you've made your way through it once, there's pretty much nothing else to see apart from side quests, which admittedly are quite repetitive. Regardless of that shortcoming, Deathspank is still one hell of a laugh to play through, and is something I can easily recommend you try out for yourself. Lost Dimension is a tactical RPG that opens up on the eve of the world's destruction. A rather cartoonish villain known as the End has set his sights on the Earth, and it's up to an elite team of soldiers to take him down for good. In order to do so, the hero Sho and his companions have to fight their way through a mysterious tower filled with strange enemies while weeding out the traitors in their ranks. The tower itself is divided into several floors, with main and side missions to be completed in a selected squad of 6 characters. Each of them have their own unique abilities and attributes, so selecting which ones suit your approach is the ticket to dealing with the many battles you'll find yourself taking on. They're all turn-based but action-oriented, where you take control of each character and can run around the battlefield with them. As characters begin to trust and like each other, they'll provide support in the form of a satisfying follow-up attack, and by positioning your team smartly and building these bonds, you'll soon learn how to topple tough enemies with ease. Fundamentally, these fights are really enjoyable, but what really makes them compelling are the individual characters. Everybody has a certain gift that adds value to their independently leveled skills. Examples include a fighter that uses teleportation to move like a puff of vapor, and an assassin with the ability to levitate. Taking this further is the traitor system that isn't afraid to punish you for your mistakes. The traitors you let live eventually turn on you, leaving you to finally kill them in battle, and if you screw up, you're at a disadvantage with one less teammate. This sense of real consequence is what really helps Lost Dimension excel, and it's a testament to the game's characters that you'll never quite know who has it against you, making for some rather interesting twists in the story. Dust 514 was one of the PlayStation 3's most unique first-person shooters, which was intricately tied into the hugely popular MMO EVE Online. The gameplay was your standard FPS fare that saw you running around an area with a team of players and taking out your opponents through various game modes with different objectives. What really made it different to the run-of-the-mill shooters though was what you would be getting up to outside of combat. The leveling system was so complex and intricate that the amount of depth available when developing your character was outstanding, and gave the player the ability to perfectly craft one that matches their playstyle. Now, with it being set against a sci-fi backdrop, there was various unique versions of weapons that everyone knows and loves, from simple handguns to sniper rifles and lasers, but perhaps more importantly than the weapons themselves was the various pieces of equipment that you could bring along to each fight, ranging from deployable spawn points, resupply stations, gadgets that allowed you to pinpoint the location of enemy units, tools that saw you being able to repair various vehicles, installations and the armor of players, and much more. Having a team that knew how to use all of this equipment in battle was essential for your success, and always felt much more like Battlefield compared to the arcadey fun of Call of Duty. Unfortunately, the servers were turned off a few years back, and there's no way to enjoy this game today, which is a real shame, as I feel the unique setup of the game, along with the staggering amount of freedom it offered, is something that's largely missing from many of the big FPS games out there today. Remember Me is an action-adventure that takes place well into the future, where a new technology that allows people to edit and share memories with one another is developed and integrated into society. The player takes up the fight as Nilin, a mysterious young woman who's trapped in a facility where her memories are about to be wiped. Thankfully, she manages to escape and ventures out into Neo Paris, where a journey of revenge, self-discovery and justice begins. On the gameplay front, this is where Remember Me truly comes into its own. The combat is easily the star of the show and is all built around a combo system that allows you to string together one of several attacks and deal some serious damage on the enemies that occupy the city. What takes this system to the next level is the ability to build your own combos from scratch, where some moves deal out more damage whilst others heal Nilin as she carries them out. Finding the right balance when building your combos is the key to formulating a formidable strategy in your attacks. Couple this with one of the several special moves that are beholden to a cooldown period, and what you have is a very versatile system where the player is free to express their creativity. Now Remember Me is a beautiful game. You'll notice the attention to detail the minute you start playing for the first time. The lighting is solid, the textures are crisp, and the animations are extremely fluid. The impressive backdrops and outdoor areas make the environments feel genuine, and exploring Neo Paris is simply breathtaking at times. It's clear the developers took a lot of care when designing the world, and as a result, making your way through it is never a dull experience. Remember Me is easily a game I can recommend everyone tries out. Sure, it has its flaws and is quite linear in its execution, but the world the developers built far outweighs the cons. Well, that does it for today's video. Keep an eye out for part 2 as that will be coming up soon, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get notified about new videos which release every Monday and Thursday. You can follow me on all of the socials to stay up to date, and also join my growing community on Discord to meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd like to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters: Rhino, Skilljim, Shuden, Richard, Amy, Daniel, Dio, Omar, Strider, Pierre, Carl, Awesome Jacket Dude, Maximus, Scott, Alfred, Terry, Ryan, Alex, GameCube Galaxy, Curse Salaryman, Fake and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining my Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon, you'll find all of these links down below. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'll catch you next time.